Welcome to Doctors at Work. My name is Matt Daniel, and this podcast is about doctors' careers. It's part of my mission to help doctors create successful and meaningful careers. And today we're talking about career decision making. As doctors, sometimes it feels like our careers are a conveyor belt, but increasingly people are willing to take stock and consider what it is that they want in their lives and what kind of a career suits them. Now, that might be decisions relating to specialties or locations or systems, or whether you take on allied roles or leadership roles, or sometimes even wholesale changes. In this episode, Giles Croft tells me about his career decisions. We identified that slowing down matters, that happiness is an inside job, and together we create a 6-point plan for successful career transitions. Welcome, Giles. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Giles. I had a fairly standard medical upbringing, although I did take a year out before uni and then a year out during to do a psychology degree. I've always been fascinated in what make people tick, and did all my training up in the Yorkshire Deanery. Went on to qualify as a surgeon, got my membership, and then not long after that left the NHS entirely, moved sort of sideways really into the world of health informatics. So I went to work for the Royal College of Physicians in their health informatics unit. Did that for a few years. Went to work for a cycling magazine for a while, sort of on the side. Started talking about career change. I've been talking about career change since 2007 at conferences. And set up my own informatics consultancy and kind of eventually sort of pulled it all together really, given all the life and career experiences that I'd had to date to start coaching and training. So these days, for the last 6 years, I've been running my own coaching practice and working with individuals and groups.
And I'm really interested in your personal experiences of career decisions and, of course, the experience that you have in helping other doctors make career decisions. And I think that's very topical at the moment because a lot of people are struggling. A lot of the jobs that we do are difficult, and lots of people are reevaluating some assumptions that they've made or decisions they've made when they were 16 and thinking, is this still right for me? Is the system right for me? Have I changed? Have my expectations changed, etc., etc.? So maybe sort of, if I can start with a really big question, which is how do we make career decisions?
Yeah, well, for me, there've been tons of changes, and the whole decision process is it's almost been sort of looking backwards at what's happened, and it's like, oh yeah, oh look, I reached that fork in the road, and I took that particular direction. I mean, the leaving surgery in the first place almost happened by accident, really. I wasn't gunning to leave in particular. I was pretty dissatisfied, I have to say. I felt it very much resonated what you said there about reassessing my what was right for me. The first time I did that, I think, was when I was at that crossroads post MRCS, eligible to apply for a training number, and that was really the first time that I'd slowed down and asked myself the question: is this what I really want? But the whole making the decision to leave, that was more a case of pursuing avenues that interested me and excited me. The health informatics side of things, I was really interested in that, and I could see the potential for really helping a much larger population by working on improving the way that we manage information in healthcare. And it was only really after having been doing that job for a while that I realised, oh yeah, I don't think I'm going to be going back. And then other decisions as well have very much come out of the blue. I feel, I mean, the really big one for me was leaving behind my health informatics consultancy, which had served me very, very well. Again, I'd become quite dissatisfied with it, and I knew that change was coming, but I didn't know what form that change was going to take, and I didn't know how to make that change happen. So I kind of like trundled along, half expecting it and half dreading it, until one day it was almost like just something just clicked, and then I thought, oh yeah, no, that's it. I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's not going to be this. So you know, you and I've known each other for a while, and in an earlier conversation, you know, you mentioned all the different changes I've had, and I mentioned that none of it's really been by design, and I think that holds true even now. In as I see my coaching practice evolve, the things that I'm doing now, they're not things that I sat down and planned. It's just where I find that life has taken me, and it's, you know, it's usually somewhere pretty exciting and fun.
So I'm interested in this because I think for a lot of people that's okay. So I think of people doing towards moving away moves. Yeah.
Yeah,
So there might be a, well, this is the career that I have, but what I would really love to do would be health informatics, you know, or, you know, I'm doing dermatology. What I would really love to do would be general practice. So people know that there's something they'd really love to do, and they deliberately do a move in that direction.
yeah,
And then there's the other opposite of that. And of course, there's all shades of grey in the middle. But the other opposite of that would be when somebody says, well, what I've got at the moment, it's not serving me, it's not right for me, you know, there's dissatisfaction for whatever reason. And then people often struggle to know where they go. So, but, you know, what you're saying is, you know, you didn't really know where you went. So how do we translate that when somebody's thinking, I'm not very happy, you know, I need to do something? And I mean, what career advice do we give somebody? Because it's easy to look back and say, well, you know, I just had to go and then stuff like
yeah. No, yeah, it does so.
that.
Um, well, for me, I mean, I remember quite clearly that I was in that position of not knowing what I wanted to go towards when I left surgery, um, and I became aware that I was spending a lot of time looking at the things that I didn't want. I mean, I spent a lot of time, you know, there was a lot of moaning. There was a lot of,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, the system's broken. And I mean,
yeah,
I was the BMA rep for my trust, and I used to be playing hell with HR all the time, trying to improve working conditions. Um, and I just remember what helped me to really turn a corner was to stop looking at those things that I didn't want, and to start looking for the things that I did want. Now, at the time, I I I, I couldn't I couldn't define what that thing was. All I had to play with was the things that I knew I didn't want. So I just very consciously turned those upside down. It's like, well, I really hate working weekends all the time. Really hate this. So what is it that I want? Well, I want to work a job that where I don't have to work weekends. And then another thing that I knew that I really liked to do was I really liked to ride my bike and wanted to do more of that. And that was really suffering as a result of my career as it was. And so I turned that on its head. It's like, well, okay, if whatever it is I'm looking for is going to be something that doesn't involve being in a big city where I can't just put my leg over the bike and head off out into the countryside. So I think even if you are in a position where all you can see is all of the things that you don't want, all of those have a flip side to them, and you just start looking start looking for the flip side, and and it just kind of switches your radar on to the sorts of opportunities that might come along and fulfill those desires, really.
the problem though is I think when people say, oh, I don't want this and the system's bad and you know there's these colleagues and there's lots and lots of negativity, and I think people just get stuck in that. There's long lists of what people don't want. Yeah. I mean, how psychologically, how does one get out of that? Here's a long list of things that I don't want. How does one get out of that into, well, what is it that I do want?
Oh, I mean, for me, it was just seeing, just realizing the futility of that. Yeah, I mean, I just observed myself spinning my wheels. It was like, oh, hang on a minute, you know, nothing's changing here. What is it that needs to change? It's. I've done everything I possibly can to try and change my environment in order to feel better. Maybe it doesn't work like that. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe there are changes that need to happen in me, and those will be reflected in the experience that I have. So for me, I suppose I just got curious about looking in a different direction, really. I mean, I took advice, I asked friends about career changes and stuff, and somebody put me on to a careers advisor, and I went to see them, and that really helped. So yeah, I mean, yeah, seek help, ask questions, be curious, um, get involved in the things that you do find interesting. Like I said, I found the health informatics stuff interesting. There was absolutely no career path there whatsoever, but I just used to sort of hang out in the information department in the hospital. I used to do audits that were related to health informatics, just to sort of demonstrate how changing something in the way that we managed information could actually improve patient experiences and staff experience as well. So without really, I think we get into difficulty when we've got a big old story about, right, I know how this situation's going to go. I need to do A, B, and C in order to get into career X, Y, or Z. Whereas for me, it's always been more a case of, well, what interests me, even in the slightest? Well, let's do a bit more of that. Let's look a little bit more in that direction. And the career path has just sort of created itself around that, really.
So that's this idea that these things I'm interested in, I'm going to go and see what are they like, what's that world like, what do I enjoy, and then things lead one thing to another. I think the for a lot of people, I think that's going to be a bit challenging, because lots of people are going to say, if I'm going to have a career change, whatever that might be, if I'm going to have a career change, I need to know exactly where I'm going to be, the exact path to get there. I need to know how much money I'm going to earn, where I'm going to apply, what skills I need to develop. So I think people like certainty. And I think in what you've outlined, it doesn't strike me like there was much certainty when you were in the middle of it, but people like certainty. So how would you help sort of somebody who's really wants certainty about what's next?
Well, I mean, I think that's a very artificial model that's been imposed upon us by the medical establishment, just because medicine's a bit like that. I used to think that was really, really important. One of the reasons I went into medicine in the first place was because I could see that career path going off into the future. It's like, oh yeah, well, I know what I'm going to be doing in 20 years. That horrifies me now. so those changes do happen, and I think just over the years of making small changes bit by bit, and seeing that things have worked out, is you just develop your own internal certainty, really. You develop your own internal security. You see that you've actually got a lot more going for you than you imagine. And you just really come to rely on that and depend upon it. And I mean, it's little steps. When I first started changing careers, I was very hesitant. I was very sort of indoctrinated in the medical way of thinking, and so it was very small steps I took. But every time you take one of those small steps and things work out, you just get that little bit more experience about how life works, and your confidence grows, really.
And it's interesting that, as you say, there's a very well-defined medical career path, also known as the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And you step on a conveyor belt and you just go along it, and then sort of then out of the other end, wherever you want to end it, whether that's sort of as a GP or retirement, whatever. But you're on a conveyor belt, and then you just step off. And I mean, probably I think the non-medical world, I don't think it really is like that, is it? Because no, outside of medicine, nobody has a conveyor belt career, and it's very much expected that people be mobile and move around. They'll be made redundant. They'll be wanting for promotions that won't happen automatically. Salary increments won't happen automatically. And so yeah, it's interesting that how very much a closed mindset we have. And actually, again, if I kind of think of my career, I don't think anybody else has the career that I have, because because to say unique, same as I don't think anybody else has the career that you have. Yeah, sort of because it is, it's very unique, and both of us for ourselves have created, found, designed, call it what you will, sort of stuff that works for us. So, one of the things that I do wonder is, you kind of outlined, and you said you spent time with informatics, and you said you were interested in cycling. So a lot of people will have significant financial commitments, and whether that's sort of student loans, and for those kind of people, then earning income is important. And I mean, what role did money play in your career decision making?
Um, it's I when I left I was on. I mean, I don't know how it works these days, but back in the day, it was all about bands, and I was on the highest possible band possible.
Yeah.
I was working in an acute surgical specialty in a big teaching hospital at the very top of the grade, and so when I left, my salary literally halved overnight, literally halved. And initially, that was a huge shock to the system, because I was accustomed to earning a certain amount of money, and I was accustomed to the life that I lived earning that amount of money. But I just adjusted very, very quickly, and I actually got into a life of simplicity. I wouldn't have ended up working for the cycling magazine if I hadn't just really spent a lot of time riding my bike, which didn't really cost any money. Whereas before I was going out for meals and going out on the town in Leeds and York all the time. I just rode my bike a lot, and so yeah, no. Again, we have a lot of stories about what we need, what we think we need, what the mind thinks we need, essentially. And I'm not saying that people don't have financial commitments, but a lot of the time, it is just a story, and it is the thing that keeps us stuck, really. So. And I was lucky, I suppose, because like when I made that initial move, I was single. I didn't, have a family or anything. But then the when I moved into coaching, which was only 6 years ago, which is probably the biggest career change I've had. Yeah, I mean, I had a family in tow, and I literally I left behind my lucrative health informatics consultancy to set out on a brand new career at the tender age of 46. So again, it's not we can keep ourselves stuck in all of the stories very, very easily.
I hope you're enjoying the show. Please click subscribe so you'll be notified when new episodes become available. This podcast is part of my mission to help doctors create successful and meaningful careers. You can be part of that mission too by forwarding this show to one person who you think might benefit from listening. Thank you. Now on with the show. There's something here for me about decision making. All the time, all of us are making decisions. And I think, lots of people might disagree with me, Giles, but I think as doctors we are quite well paid. Yeah, so maybe we might not be paid as much as we should be paid, but relatively we're quite well paid. And I think that's for people that are looking at roles, people don't appreciate that. And again, if I think for me, so I work less than full time, for example, yeah, and and that for me was a very conscious decision. That meant that yes, I'm giving up some of my income, but that is because in my case, because there's other stuff that I'm interested in doing, yeah. And the other stuff doesn't pay anywhere near as well as I get paid as a consultant, but it's stuff that really interests me, and and I kind of traded off some income for making sure that I create space for stuff that interests me. And again, it is about a decision, isn't it? So, because, all of us can say, yes, money is really important. And, that's fine, nothing wrong with that. But then if that's the case, then you have to accept the downsides. Yeah. So typically for me is one of the things I hear a lot in my discussions is people struggle with responsibility, or people struggle with busyness. So people might say, I don't want responsibility, I don't want stress, I don't want uncertainty, I don't want the busyness. And then there's part of me that sort of says, yeah, but that's why you paid a lot of money. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're paid a
exactly.
lot of money because you're busy and because it's
Yeah,
stressful, and that's fine. So if you want sort of something that is much simpler and much easier and much better boundaried, with very clear hours, then chances are that won't pay the same amount of money. And
I,
like either's fine, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, and
But
there's no. I think when I look back now, one of the biggest motivators for me leaving was, you mentioned this conveyor belt, and us having this idea of how things are going to be. And I got to a point where I was surrounded by people who had crossed that imaginary finish line. They had the money, they had the private practice, they had the family, the cars, the houses, the holidays. They had all the things that I was working towards, and not all of them were happy, and some of them were miserable. And even back then, it was like, oh, hang on a minute, this might this might not be the answer. Gosh, they say money doesn't buy happiness. Maybe they were right. And when I look back on some of the most fulfilling experiences I've had since I left medicine, working for the cycling magazine and just being able to pick up the phone to the editor and say, hey, look, you've not run an article on the tour of Lombardy for several years. Would you like me to go over to Italy and and ride the route of it and write an article about it? Yeah, go on. Off I go to Italy for a couple of weeks. Now, that didn't really earn me hardly any money at all, but those are the things I'm going to remember on my deathbed. I'm not going to remember the meals I had out when I was earning a whole load of money in Leeds.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm totally with you. It's and like now I earn a fraction of what I used to earn, to be honest, Matt, but I am multiple times happier than I was. So yeah.
yeah. And I think it's if people enjoy money, nothing wrong with that. Yeah, it just
Absolutely.
each one of us sort of makes different decisions. But I think for me, if I think for some of my career conversations that I have, often, yes, it's a choice that needs to be made. And I guess another thing would be, it sounds like you did a lot of upskilling. You did sort of the various audits aligned to informatics, and presumably sort of, you worked in that world, you made connections, sort of, you upskilled yourself. And people often do that. That might be formal upskilling, or it might be informal upskilling, whatever it is, but sort of that people upskill. But that is a time investment, and often it's a financial investment also, for people to upskill themselves. And again, it's if we kind of come back to this idea of balancing and decision making, people need to make a decision as to, if this is what I want to do, I need to invest time, and or money, in order to do that. And I mean, how do we as human beings make those calculations in our head about, what do I need to do to develop myself, what do I need to do to improve myself, how do I need to position myself for a future that is brighter slash better, whatever that might be. Because I think, as you said, that we get stuck. So this is me, this is my identity, this is what I've always been, this is what I've always done, and I've got to move away from this is what I've always done and my life is miserable. And we want to move into sort of saying, well, okay, I don't know what the future is, but this is direction I need to go in, and I need to develop myself. How do people make that mindset shift into investing and developing themselves?
Good question. Good question. I'm not sure I have a good answer for you. Um, I mean, I suppose for me, it's been a sort of a trial and error, pruning away of all of the ways not to be happy. If that makes any sense. I identified quite early on that just earning a whole load of money and having a whole load of stuff wasn't the route to happiness. I then changed career and thought that that was where happiness came from. And having changed career, I realised that it wasn't that either, because I got I got dissatisfied with the career that I was doing. So just over the years, I suppose it's just slowly but surely dawned on me that happiness really is an inside job. And the more that we understand what takes us away from that in any given moment, is the route to experiencing more of it. And for me, the kind of coaching I do, that's very much what I do. Is I point people back to their inbuilt peace of mind, their inbuilt health, their inbuilt happiness, that's there, their inbuilt security, their inbuilt confidence. That's what's there all along. And the way I do that is to point out what it is that takes people away from that. And it's very simple, it's very straightforward. It's almost so simple and straightforward that it seems overly simplistic sometimes, but really it's the activity of our mind saying that we don't have these things, saying that tomorrow is always going to be better than what's right under our noses. That's the only thing that really ever gets in the way of us experiencing that peace of mind. It's called peace of mind for a good reason. It's like it's peace in spite of the activity of the mind telling us that everything needs to change, when a lot of the time it doesn't.
Can you give me some examples? I love this idea of happiness being an inside job. That's a great phrase. Yeah. Have you got sort of some specific examples about what you mean by that and sort of how it shows up?
We can be we we can experience that peace of mind in any moment. For me, it's being present to life itself. It is where we being, I mean, and it's called lots of different things, isn't it? It's called flow. You don't necessarily need to be sitting quietly meditating or something to experience that. But when any time we are free from the rabbiting that's going on in our head saying that things need to be different, we will experience that deep inner feeling of peace and contentment and fulfillment. The problem is that we've been taught as humans to attach that feeling to something else. So if we're on holiday or something, we're having a really nice holiday and we feel really good, what we do is we attach that feeling to the holiday. But you don't need to look very far. I mean, I'm sure everybody listening to this conversation has been somewhere really nice and they've had a rubbish time, or been somewhere really rubbish where they've had a really good time. I mean, I remember going on holiday not just a few years ago when I became like really properly fully mobile, self-employed. Went to France thinking, oh, this is brilliant, I'm going to have such an amazing time, and because I can do my work from wherever I want now. And I went on this amazing holiday in France, basically took all my work and all my worries with me and had an absolutely miserable time. And the experience of the holiday was way better before I went on the holiday than it was when I got there. So really seeing where happiness comes from, that seeing that happiness is ever present. It's like it's almost like our default state, really. Peace of mind, contentment, fulfillment is there all the time as our baseline, other than the activities of this noisy little thing in our head that's constantly pulling us away to past concerns and future worries. And when we can see that, we spend a lot more time present to life itself, and it turns out it's pretty good.
Yeah. It's as you were talking, there's something that's coming up for me in my context. Maybe not the word happiness, but if I think of this projects that I'm doing at work, there's lots of stuff that I'm doing, and it's issues that I'm really passionate about. Yeah, so I get involved in stuff because I think it's really important and I'm really passionate about it, and I enjoy doing it. But then the stuff that gets in the way is that then stuff happens and I say, well, you shouldn't have done that. I can't believe she did that. And, and so pissed me off, 6 months ago on a different project. Yeah. When I don't like sort of, this person's career trajectory, and then all of that sort of blah, 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 blah in the head. And then kind of, so I get involved in something that I'm really passionate about and I want to succeed. succeed. But then all of a sudden it's full of sort of all of this thing that says, well, so and so said, and they didn't do what they should have done, and that person doesn't answer their email, and all of that. And I'm kind of thinking, well, hold on a second, like this is something I'm really passionate about. I enjoy doing this stuff, and it's just hard work. Yeah. So and like, as you're talking about sort of happiness being inside, is that in my experience, I say, well, gosh, this is hard work, but it's perhaps what's my interest in it. That's not hard work. I'm passionate about the thing. I love doing it. Yeah. But it's perhaps sort of my interpretation of everybody else, is a judgment of everybody else, or letting anybody else's sayings, efficiencies, inefficiencies, ways of working, all of that takes away from the enjoyment of something that at the end of the day I'm really passionate about and committed to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can. It's. I remember once I had a coaching session of my own, and I was in a I was in a really bad mood by the end of it, and I thought, oh, I know what works. I'll go out for a long walk, because that always works. I always feel better after a long walk. And I went out for a long walk, and I was on my own, and the weather was beautiful, and it was glorious scenery. And I got back and I was just as miserable, maybe even more miserable as when I went out. And it's not the outdoors that's doing it, We've all got like these little, I mean, this is one of my favorite props, and it's no good if you're listening, but we've all got these little internal snow globes, and we get all shook up with our thinking, and we take it really, really seriously, and we take those judgments seriously, and we take the opinions of our mind really seriously. And we can very much make that worse by carrying on thinking about it, carry on making it really, really serious. And that's basically what I did on this walk. I just, I was trying to put my well-being onto a walk, and hey presto, I got back and it hadn't worked at all. And there was a lesson to be learned there.
And it's interesting that there's something that you or I really enjoy, or it's happiness for somebody else, going to France in your case, and then so there's all of the layers of additional stuff that you kind of think, okay, what just happened. So I mean, okay, so we got as far as, or you got as far as saying, okay, health informatics, that kind of, it seems a bit interesting, it's a bit novel.
Yeah.
I fancy a bit of that. Oh, and I'd love to do a bit of cycling, and and I don't really want to work weekends. I mean, how on earth does one create a career from, I fancy a bit of this, I don't want to work weekends, and I want to do more cycling?
You just spend more and more time looking in that direction. Honestly, I can't give any more advice than that, because like you say, your career path has been your career path, mine has been mine. The way that I got into health informatics was literally, I responded to a rapid response against a BMJ article I'd read about health informatics that I didn't understand, and I literally just replied to the email address and said, I'm interested in this area, and ended up having a conversation, and then ended up going to work for that person. But that was after a lot of time of kind of like going to conferences I didn't really understand about health informatics, just trying to learn as much as possible, having conversation after conversation after conversation, and being told, no, there is no career path. But to me, it just made sense. I was a junior doctor who had like a whole load of experience in it, like on the front line of using information in healthcare. I had a real passion for it. I had some ideas about how things should change, and so I never really took no for an answer. I just carried on asking questions,
Yeah.
and eventually, it a job appeared, out of nowhere. And it was the same with the cycling. I was determined to get an article published in my favorite cycling magazine. And I'd done this massive ride in the Alps once, and I'd taken a whole load of photos, and I wrote about it. I wrote it in the style that they use, and I looked at how many words they have in each of their articles, and I gave them like 10-15% more. Sent it in, and just kept back, literally just kept phoning up. Like every week I'd phone up, have you read it yet? Have you read it yet? Have you read it there? And eventually they published it. And when they asked me to send in the photos, I took them in instead. I took them to the headquarters of the magazine. And the next thing I know, I'm sat next to the editor of the magazine, and he's like, "What on earth are you doing sitting in my room talking to me? Aren't you a junior doctor or something?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but you deal with medical problems in the magazine, don't you?" And he said, "Well, we used to, but we don't anymore. The guy who used to do it for us has quit recently." And I was like, "Do you want me to have a go?" And there we are. I'm working. Next thing I know, I'm working with the cycling magazine. So, like, I can't give you instructions on how to do these things, because other than just like whatever you're interested in life, just do more of that, and opportunities will present themselves.
So, Giles, I've on the basis of that, I've identified the Giles Croft six-stage plan to get in the dream career that you want.
Go
Okay.
on.
Number one, networking.
Okay.
Okay. Sort of number two, get yourself a new identity. Going to
Uh-huh.
conferences, immersing yourself in new community, sort of, to go in places, going to the right places, coffees, reading the right magazine. Number two. Number three, identify the transferable skills that you've got and use them. Number four, upskills yourself for the direction you want to go in. Number five, have a go. And six, be a persistent pest and sort of and keep at it no matter how much people push you away.
Yeah,
There you go.
absolutely.
Can we go 50-50 on that? Because I've distilled it into sort
Yeah.
of stage
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Croft Daniels six-stage career change plan.
Brilliant. Right. Let's write a book. Yeah. I would say we'll make millions. We'll make peanuts from having a book. Yeah, I agree with all that. That's brilliant. And I think like probably the most important one, especially for medics, is the whole identity piece. You said like get yourself a new identity. For me, what's even more important is to see how completely made up identity is. To see that identity is thought created as well, because like I think it's what's that famous Alan Watts saying, you are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. And maybe that's been at the heart of all my changes, is seeing just how identities can be picked up and dropped as you like. They really can, because they're all completely made up. People are quite welcome to think about me and put me in a box as much as they like, but I don't really put myself in a box at all.
I like Foucault's saying, which is I think it was Foucault said, identity is something you shop for. Yeah, sort of, and I like sort of that in a kind of career sense, that okay, you're a doctor, or you're a GP or a dermatologist, but if you want to change from dermatology to respiratory, or you want to change from general practice to health informatics, or you want to change from health informatics into medicine, whatever it might be, that there's a way that we see ourselves. But if how we see ourselves, if that doesn't suit us anymore, then you surround yourself with a new way of working. You try on. I think Herminia Ibarra sort of writes about this idea, and she talks about you try on a new identity. Go places and sort of say, okay, today, Giles, I'm going to be a cycling journalist, and okay,
Yeah.
what do I dress like? What do I behave? How do I talk? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? And you just sort of try on new identities.
Yeah,
And
that's brilliant. And I did literally have to do that.
yeah,
It was so hard for me at first to let go of that,
yeah,
surgeon identity. It really was. I used to start every conversation with, well, I used to be a surgeon, and then again, it took me ages to figure out, well, why am I even saying that? Why am I identifying with
yeah.
something that what am I trying to do here? And so then I used to play a game of taking on this identity of a cycling journalist, and not telling people at all about anything that I'd done in the past.
So it's the identity of a cycling journalist that has very clearly identified transferable skills from whatever you happen to have done in the past.
Cool.
But
Yeah.
the secret then is it's not the old identity, but it's the old transferable skills. That the identity is not relevant, the transferable skills are relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I mean, again, people very ready to put us into boxes, and I think that the longer we can the longer we can stop them from doing that, the more likely they are to see the person that we really are at heart.
Yeah. And the challenge that I see at the moment is, there are lots of dissatisfied doctor, and the problem is that means people put that person into a box and say, oh, it's a doctor that wants to leave, medicine for whatever reason, and then that creates an identity, and that creates a narrative, and that creates a box. Whereas I think the way that you've outlined your thing, which is okay, the stuff that's make me unhappy, what is it? And how they turn that round, and the answer may be leaving medicine, and if I think often the answer is not leaving medicine, because because it's just the same stuff sort of elsewhere, but it's different from everybody, isn't it? Yeah. But the point is that I like that idea of sort of say, well, this is the stuff that I don't want. Okay, how do I flip that on its head and identify what I do want, and then the Croft Daniels 6-stage career plan, sort of from there onwards. Hereby trademarked. So I think that's the key. I think I'm going to bring us to a close, Giles, if that's okay. Maybe if I could just ask you to summarize what we talked about, what would be your top tips for doctors at work?
Well, I mean, you've done it with our 6-point program, Matt, and I think the most important thing for me is to really spend time learning about yourself, learning about how you and your mind works, and really how you're experiencing things, because that inner change is what will drive the outer changes. It doesn't work the other way round. I think if you really have a real commitment to inner change, then the things that you want to see will start appearing in your outer world.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Giles.
Welcome.